Story 1. Back in the summer of 2005, I was just a scrawny 12-year-old kid living in a quiet suburb of Columbus, Ohio. Our neighborhood was the kind of place where folks mowed their lawns on Saturdays and waved hello without a second thought. My family was all about patriotism. Our house was decked out in red, white, and blue, from the flagpole in the yard to the curtains in the windows. Mom was a veteran, and she made sure we honored that. But that summer, something shifted. That's when the new neighbor moved in next door. His name was Frank Harlan, early 40s, always dressed neat in button-down shirts. But there was something off about him. His smile was too wide. His eyes lingered a beat too long. I catch him watching me from his porch as I walked home from school. One afternoon, I'm cutting through the block after baseball practice, backpack slung over my shoulder, when he calls out from his lawn chair. "Hey kid, you like red, white, and blue stuff? Your house is full of it. I'm having a little sale in the backyard. Patriotic gear, toys, all that. Come check it out. I've got some cool model planes you'd love." His voice was smooth, almost eager, but my gut twisted. Why me? Why now? No one else around. I mumbled something about grabbing money from home and hightailed it out of there. My parents weren't back from work yet, so I bolted to the house next to ours. That's where Mike lived. A burly guy in his mid-30s, covered in prison ink from his rough past. He'd done time for armed robbery back in the day, but he turned it around, ran a garage fixing bikes. Scary as hell to look at, but he was solid. Watched out for the neighborhood kids like a hawk. I banged on his door out of breath. "Mike, that new guy next door. He's got some weird sale in his backyard. Invited me over. Feels off, man." Mike's face hardened. He wiped his grease-stained hands on a rag. "Off how? Stay here." But I insisted on going with him, stupid kid curiosity. We marched over, and Frank's still sitting there, that grin plastered on. "Who's this?" he asks, eyeing Mike like a cornered dog. "I'm the neighbor," Mike growls. "Kid says you got a sale. Show us." Frank leads us around back, his steps a little too quick. The yard's set up like a flea market. Tables with red, white, and blue junk. Flags, old t-shirts, cheap plastic toys. But it's empty. No signs, no other people. And then I spot it. Through the cracked open back door, a camcorder on a tripod, pointed right at the living room couch. Wires running to a computer. My skin crawled. What the hell was that for? Mike notices too. He steps closer, blocking me. "Nice setup. You filming your sales or something?" Frank stammers, sweat beading on his forehead. "Just hobbies. Editing videos. Nothing special." His eyes dart to me, and for a split second, I swear I see hunger in them. "We didn't buy anything." Mike grabbed my arm and we left. "Don't go near that creep again," he muttered as we walked away. That night, Mike called the cops anonymously, tipped them off about the weird vibe and the camera. Told my parents too. They made me start walking the long way home, avoiding his side of the street. Life went on, but I couldn't shake it. Fast forward 2 years. Frank gets arrested. Turns out he wasn't just creepy, he was a predator. Cops found hidden rooms in his basement, stocked with souvenirs from kids he'd lured in before. Photos, videos, the works. His sales were bait to get boys like me inside, alone, where he drugged their sodas and, well, you can guess the rest. One kid from a nearby town had gone missing months earlier. They linked it back to him through DNA on a discarded toy. Mike's tip had started the investigation rolling. If I hadn't trusted my gut that day, who knows? I still drive by that old house sometimes. It's for sale again, empty. But at night, I wonder how many others weren't as lucky. Watch your kids, folks. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Story 2. Back in the early 1980s, I was a middle school kid growing up in a quiet suburb of Akron, Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbors but nobody pried too deep. That changed when the new family moved in across the street. The house had been empty for months, and suddenly there they were. A couple in their late 30s, pale and withdrawn, with 2 small kids who looked about 4 and 6. The boy and girl had that mismatched vibe, like they didn't quite belong. Dark hair on the older one, blonde on the younger, eyes that darted around like scared animals. The parents, let's call them the Harises, kept to themselves. No waves, no small talk, just curtains drawn tight most days. I'd see the kids sometimes, peeking out from behind the screen door, but they never played outside. No bikes in the yard, no laughter echoing down the block. One evening, as my folks and I were grilling burgers, Mrs. Harris shows up at our door, wringing her hands. "I'm so sorry about the noise," she says, her voice shaky, eyes not meeting ours. "The kids, they scream and cry all the time. I hope it hasn't bothered you." My dad exchanged a look with my mom. "No, ma'am, haven't heard a thing," he replied politely. But it stuck with me. Why apologize for something that wasn't happening? That night, lying in bed, I swore I heard faint whimpers from across the street, muffled like they were coming from underground. Brushed it off as the wind. A couple weeks later, Dad's home early from his shift at the Goodyear plant, tinkering in the garage. Suddenly, this blood-curdling scream rips through the air. He drops his tools and bolts across the street. Mrs. Harris is in the backyard, hysterical, pointing at the little boy crumpled on the concrete patio. "He fell, hit his head on the edge," she's wailing. Dad checks for a pulse, nothing. Cops and paramedics swarm the place. The kid's gone, skull cracked open like an egg. But even to my young eyes, something felt staged. No toys scattered around, no sign of play, just that cold patio slab. Then the real circus starts. Unmarked vans, detectives in suits, yellow tape blocking the whole yard. Looked like a scene from Hill Street Blues to me. Whispers spread through the neighborhood. Autopsy showed old bruises, broken ribs healing wrong, not from a fall. Mrs. Harris had beaten the boy to death with a broom handle, then dragged him outside to fake an accident. Mr. Harris? He just stood by, complicit. But it got darker. Turns out they'd fled their last home in Canton, about 20 miles south, after multiple CPS reports from neighbors hearing screams at night. It was even a local news blip on WKYC back then. Couple suspected of abusing adopted kids, but no charges stuck. In the pre-internet era, you could pack up and vanish easy. The trial blew it all open. Those kids weren't legally adopted. The Harises had bought them through a shady network tied to a fundamentalist church group out of Texas. Similar to those Bethesda home scandals where pregnant teens were coerced into giving up babies. Cops found receipts, fake papers. The older girl testified in whispers. Beatings for spilling milk, locked in the basement for days. And the twist that haunts me? The boy wasn't the first. Digging into their past revealed a missing toddler from their previous town. Never found, presumed dumped somewhere off I-77. Mr. Harris got life. She got 30 years. The surviving girl vanished into foster care. I've wondered ever since, why go through the trouble to acquire kids just to break them? Power? Sickness? Folks like that don't see children as human, they're possessions. If you're a dad out there, trust your gut on the quiet ones. Evil hides in plain sight right across the street. Story 3. It was the summer of 1987 in Toledo, Ohio, a working-class neighborhood off Sylvania Avenue where kids still played kickball in the street and nobody locked their doors. I was 10, a skinny kid with pigtails, always outside on my bike or drawing chalk murals on the driveway. Our street was tight-knit. Families knew each other, shared beers on porches. But when Mr. Dorsey moved into the little ranch house next door, things got weird. He was in his late 40s, balding, always in khakis and a tucked-in polo, like he was trying too hard to look normal. He'd sit on his front porch, sipping iced tea, watching us kids play. At first, it was just smiles and waves. "Nice day, huh, Jenny?" He'd call out, knowing my name from overhearing my mom. I'd nod politely, but something about his stare made my stomach knot. Then it started. The first time I was riding my bike past his yard. He stepped out, quick as a snake, and smack. One sharp spank on my backside as I pedaled by. I froze, shocked, but he just laughed it off. "Just a game, kid. Keeps you quick." His voice was too cheerful, like he was daring me to react. I sped home, heart pounding, but my parents were at work, and I didn't know how to explain it. I was 10, embarrassed, confused, scared. It became a ritual. Every day I played outside, when no adults were around, he'd find a way to be there. Mowing his lawn, watering his flowers. Smack. Always just one, always with that same creepy chuckle. "Gotta stay sharp, Jenny," he'd say. Never when my parents or other neighbors were watching. He was careful, like a predator stalking prey. I started avoiding the front yard, sticking to the back, but he'd still catch me, cutting through the alley or checking his mailbox, right as I passed. One day I told my best friend, Sarah, at school. Her eyes widened. "That's not a game, Jenny. That's gross. Tell your dad." But I was terrified. What if Mr. Dorsey denied it? What if he got mad? Sarah's older brother, Matt, a lanky 16-year-old who worked at the local Dairy Queen, overheard us. "That guy's a creep," he said, spitting on the ground. "I'm telling my uncle. He's a cop." That afternoon, Matt's uncle, Officer Dave, came by in plain clothes. He sat me down in our living room, my parents hovering nervously. "Tell me about Mr. Dorsey," he said, notepad in hand. I spilled everything, my voice shaking. Mom's face went white. Dad's fists clenched. They hadn't noticed because Dorsey was so normal. Chatty at block parties, always offering to fix a neighbor's fence. But Dave's jaw tightened. "I've heard that name before," he muttered. Turns out Dorsey wasn't just a creep, he was a repeat offender. A records check showed he'd been fired from a teaching job in Dayton years back after complaints from parents about inappropriate contact with students. No charges, though. He'd skipped town before anything stuck. Dave staked out our street for a week, catching Dorsey in the act on a grainy camcorder hidden in a neighbor's hedge. The footage showed him waiting, watching, then striking as I rode by. It wasn't just a spank, it was control, a sick power trip. The arrest was quiet, no flashing lights, but the neighborhood buzzed. Cops searched his house and found a locked drawer full of Polaroids. Dozens of kids from different towns, all taken from a distance, some with red markers circling their faces. Mine was there, labeled Jenny, Summer '87. Worse, they found a journal detailing his games, describing how he picked kids who seemed shy, unlikely to talk. He'd been building up to something worse, luring kids inside with promises of candy or toys. I wasn't his first victim, but thank God I was his last in Toledo. Dorsey got 15 years, but the damage lingered. I couldn't ride my bike for months without checking over my shoulder. My parents sold the house a year later, unable to shake the violation of trust. Even now, as an adult, I wonder how many other kids he hurt before someone like Matt spoke up. If you're a parent, watch your neighbors closely. The worst ones don't look like monsters. They blend in, smiling, waiting for their moment. Story 4. Our neighborhood in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, was the kind of place where kids rode bikes until the streetlights flickered on and neighbors swapped small talk over picket fences. I was 13, a curious kid always watching the world from my front porch, skateboard in hand. Across the road lived Mrs. Klein, a bony woman with sunken eyes and a nervous twitch, always with her quiet daughter, Hannah, maybe 8, who barely spoke and never smiled. They were recluses, their house a fortress of drawn curtains and silence. But what stuck with me was Mrs. Klein's strange habit. Every morning, she'd haul 2 massive laundry bags out her front door, one slung over each shoulder, her frail frame buckling under the weight. Hannah trailed behind, head down like a ghost. They'd trudge down Chestnut Street and return hours later, bags still bulging. This happened almost daily, no matter the weather. I couldn't figure it out. How did 2 people need that much laundry? My friends joked she was smuggling stolen goods or worse, but the way she clutched those bags, like they were her only anchor, sent a chill down my spine. One day I got gutsy. I was skateboarding past their house when Mrs. Klein stepped out, bags in tow. "Hey, Mrs. Klein, those look heavy. Need a hand?" I called, trying to sound friendly. She froze, her eyes snapping to mine, wide, unblinking, like a trapped animal. "Stay away," she hissed, her German accent cutting like a knife. "You don't touch these." Hannah glanced at me, her face pale, and whispered something to her mother before they hurried off. That look in her eyes wasn't just fear. It was a warning. I told my mom that night at dinner. She sighed, setting down her fork. "Leave her be, Tommy. She's a refugee from Nazi Germany. Lost her whole family in the war. She's got her demons." But Mom's voice wavered, like she knew more than she was letting on. I couldn't shake the feeling those bags held something darker than dirty clothes. Things got stranger. Nobody at the King Street laundromat ever saw Mrs. Klein. Late at night, I'd hear muffled thuds from their house, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. Once, peeking through my blinds, I saw her silhouette in their basement window, hunched over one of the bags, muttering frantically. My imagination ran wild. Cash? Weapons? Something worse? The creepiest moment came one afternoon when I was shooting hoops in my driveway. Hannah appeared across the street, alone, staring at me. I waved, uneasy. She shuffled closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Mama says they're coming for her. She keeps their things in the bags so they won't take her away." I froze. "Who's they?" I asked. Hannah's eyes darted to her house, and she leaned in, her voice trembling. "The people she made disappear. She says they scream in her dreams." Before I could ask more, Mrs. Klein's voice barked from their porch, "Hannah, inside, now!" And she scurried back, leaving me with goosebumps. Days later, it all fell apart. Mrs. Klein didn't return at her usual time. Hannah showed up at our door, shaking, eyes red. "Mama's gone," she whispered. "She took the bags, but she's not back." My dad, a volunteer firefighter, grabbed his jacket. "Stay with Mom, kid." He and a neighbor, Mr. Callahan, went to check the Klein's house. I wasn't supposed to follow, but I crept behind, hiding behind a shrub. Their door was ajar, the house a wreck, furniture overturned, papers scattered. In the basement, Dad found one of the bags ripped open. No clothes, just stacks of old photos, letters in German, and jewelry, like relics from a lost world. The other bag was gone. By morning, cops swarmed the street. They found Mrs. Klein 2 days later, wandering a field off Route 30, clutching the second bag, raving about them coming to get her. The police opened it. More jewelry, forged IDs, cash, and a rusted Luger pistol, still loaded. The truth was uglier than I could have imagined. Mrs. Klein wasn't just a refugee. During the war, she'd collaborated with the Nazis in Munich, cataloging valuables stolen from Jewish families to save herself. When the Allies closed in, she fled with what she could carry, living in constant dread of being exposed. Those bags weren't laundry. They were her shame, her stolen treasures, never leaving her side. Hannah wasn't her daughter. She was the child of a family Mrs. Klein had betrayed, taken to prop up the lie of a grieving mother. Worse, police linked her to a missing boy from her last town in Ohio. His body later found buried off I-76. Mrs. Klein was extradited to Germany for war crime inquiries. Hannah disappeared into foster care. Our street never recovered its warmth. Hannah's words, about her mother's dreams filled with screams, still haunt me. If you notice someone acting strange, don't brush it off. Some people carry their sins in plain sight, waiting for the past to catch up.